the majority of organizations focus on investigating failures and try to explain human behavior by using mechanical failure as analogy. So let me explain.
Welcome to 1202, the Human Factors Podcast, the podcast that covers all things about humans, technology, and particularly the bits in between.
What is it organizations do already? What sort of typical activities would we expect if I was going to go into a large organization?
Sure. So in my experience, the majority of organizations that I've been exposed to through my various industry engagements focus on investigating failures and try to explain human behavior by using mechanical failure as analogy. So let me explain. Take a car engine as an example of a simple mechanical system. Every part has a role to play for the engine to function correctly and effectively. These parts perform very specific functions and cannot be switched. They cannot be switched. They don't adapt. They don't learn over time. You cannot use a gasket to replace another part. If one part fails, the engine stops working. So, for example, if a gasket fails, you will have a leak and you've got a failure. And so when you investigate engine failure, you can claim that it failed because of a failure of one component. Here, the idea of a root cause makes sense and can be used fairly effectively. You will use a higher quality gasket next time, or you will redesign that, and you can replace the part, and the engine is working again. And I want to emphasize it because that will be important for this analogy. You can replace the part, and the system starts working correctly. So when there is an accident in organizations, leaders, people often think of people as a mechanical part that failed. And if we somehow correct them or replace them, we will then correct, address the root cause and make the system working again. The problem is this way of thinking, of using the engineering analogy, which applies to simple mechanical systems, and trying to use it for explaining human behavior or even more complex organizational behavior, is inadequate. It's not suitable for explaining and articulating how this works. So even if we compared people to parts, these parts learn over time, they adapt, they change roles, they influence others, they are influenced, and so on. So you've got all that human and organizational reality. And so now, having said that, I in my experience, that's where I see majority. Now, there is a growing wave of organizations that try to modernize that thinking and use human performance, HOP, human organizational performance, safety 2 approaches, insights from the human factors discipline. But even within that group, they tend to focus on applying that to failure when something fails, whether there's an accident or defect. I've recently talked with a number of global organizations, which I would consider leading in the deployment of HOP. And they said that they are still not applying those tools and techniques proactively, and that's a next chapter on their journey. And there is a small number of organizations that experiment with this approach because they recognize the value it can bring. And I happen to be at the forefront of this effort and developed the know-how, expertise from guidance tools, toolkits. But importantly, I was able to figure out how to make it happen in large organizations in order to tangibly reduce the risk and tangibly reduce the harm and suffering.
Big thanks to Barry for inviting me to the podcast. The link to the podcast page is in the video description below. If you'd like to learn more about proactive learning, visit my website, learningfromnormalwork.com. You will find there many resources to get you started, including a free 14-day email course, a comprehensive e-learning training, face-to-face training, as well as multiple examples and case studies. Links in the video description. Thanks.